Welcome. I would like to welcome you to episode 401 of the Unpopular podcast. This is the man, the myth, the legend, Jalen Hunter. And here at the Unpopular podcast, I only ask you to agree with me. I'm asking you to hear me out. When you got to that age where jobs started to be important for you, where it was vital for you to get a job, there was something that your mother, your father, your guardian, whoever, usually helped you with. And that is called a resume. Now, obviously, some resumes are more extensive than others at that age. Some resumes don't have anything because you really haven't done much in the work world. But resumes were always important as far as displaying what you've done and if you qualify for said job. That's how it's always been. Now, yes, I understand that some jobs, resumes matter more or less than others. I get that. We're not having a conversation about resumes to that extent. But what I'm saying is, the resume is supposed to show what you've done, and the resume is supposed to be a paper or two to describe or to answer the question, are you suitable for this job? Now, what's interesting about resumes is everything that you do is supposed to be on that resume. Resumes are supposed to tell your work story, your work history. And when you look at some people's resumes, you can clearly see that they have not done enough to get the job. When you look at some resumes, some people have done more than enough to get the job. When you look at some people's resumes, they're overqualified for the job. That's what resumes are for. They're supposed to tell the story of your work life. Now, there's trigger words in media. There's trigger words in the world right now. And I try to stay away from those trigger words. I try hard. But this week, or last week, Kliff Kingsbury was announced as the offensive coordinator for the Washington Commanders. We talked about last episode how Dan Quinn, who was the defensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys, he was also the head coach for Atlanta Falcons. He was the defensive coordinator for the Seattle Seahawks that won a Super Bowl, i.e. the resume. Dan Quinn became the new head coach for the Washington Commanders, and now reports have come out that Kliff Kingsbury, who was in the running for the Raiders offensive coordinator position, withdrew his name there and signed on to become the Washington Commanders offensive coordinator. When you look at a move like that, the first thing I ask myself is, qualifications. What has Kliff Kingsbury done to qualify as the offensive coordinator for the Washington Commanders? We're going to talk about Eric Bieniemy in a second, so I ain't forget about him. I understand that Kliff Kingsbury was the head coach for Texas Tech. And when he took the job to be the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals, remember, he had a losing record at Texas Tech. But he took the head coach at Arizona Cardinals. Kyler Murray was his quarterback. And when he finished as the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals, you guessed it, he had a losing record. We talk about resumes. The question that I'm posing is, what has Kliff Kingsbury done that makes him the best candidate for the offensive coordinator position for the Washington Commanders. You can say, oh, Jay, he had one of the best offenses in college. He had Patrick Mahomes, who a lot of people consider the greatest quarterback we've ever seen. Well, Jay, remember that 11-6 season in 2021? Yeah, I remember that the Arizona Cardinals was far and away the best team in football until the bye week hit, and then they just plummeted. I talked about trigger words. I don't like using this because I feel anytime you use this word, anytime you use a word associated with this, people turn their ears off because they think you're quote unquote race baiting. They think you're making it about race. They think that your argument is immediately invalid because you brought race into it. But what this is, or what this feels like, I could be wrong. What this feels like is blatant, clear cut. You know what? Let me say it like this. We talked about resumes. We just talked about Kliff Kingsbury and his resume. Let's talk about the resume of the person that was let go, that was the previous offensive coordinator, and that is Eric Bieniemy. Eric Bieniemy, let's talk about his resume. He's a multiple-time Super Bowl champion as an offensive coordinator. And while he was the offensive coordinator for the Washington Commanders last year, and Washington struggled, it wasn't because of the offensive coordinating scheme. It was because of the lack of talent that was on the roster. There are talented positions, but the offensive line struggled. The defense obviously struggled. You can only do so much if you have a bad offensive line. I don't care if you have Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback. If you have a bad offensive line, you're always playing with one hand strapped behind your back. Let's just say that. Now I get it. I get when an old regime, Dan Quinn didn't bring on Eric Bieniemy. Ron Rivera did. Ron Rivera did, and Dan Quinn has no allegiance, no ties to Eric Bieniemy, so he doesn't need to keep him or not. And especially if you are somebody new at the head coaching position, you want your guys. You want your staff. And if there was there's residue of the previous regime, i.e. the Ron Rivera staff, more than likely they're going to be out of here. I said that when Ron Rivera fired, Jack Del Rio and a bunch of defensive coaches. I said Ron Rivera is more than likely going to be out. And if Ron Rivera is out and they're letting Ron Rivera stay to the end of the season, more than likely Eric Bieniemy is out. Again, we're going to touch on Eric Bieniemy a tad bit more in a second. But the word that I was speaking on, the word that I was so hesitant to say, is white privilege. And you're probably asking, how is this white privilege? You just described Eric Bieniemy wasn't a Dan Quinn guy, so Dan Quinn has no allegiance, has no ties to Eric Bieniemy. You just said that you expected Eric Bieniemy to be out of here. I did. So, Jay, how is this white privilege? It's white privilege because of the resume talk. Look, I'm not saying that people shouldn't have opportunities to do what they want to do. I'm not saying that people shouldn't have a second chance at anything. But what I'm saying is Kliff Kingsbury's resume has not proved to be a resume of a person that should readily continue to get a job at the same position he readily continues to struggle at. Let's not get it twisted, bro. Kliff Kingsbury has had opportunity after opportunity to prove himself as a suitable coach. And I understand that there's a difference between head coach and offensive coordinator. But again, it's like people are completely forgetting his NFL resume and looking at his college resume, not highlighting the fact that he had Patrick Mahomes as his coach or his quarterback. And if you want to look further, every single year, the Arizona Cardinals resume or offense skyrocketed in the beginning of the year with Kyler Murray, because I understand that one year he was injured. They skyrocketed at the beginning of the year. Towards the second half of the season, they always plummet. That's coaching. I know a lot of people. It was big news when Kyler Murray got his extension, and in the wording in the extension was talking about film study. And how they're putting stipulations that you have to study film for a certain amount of hours of the week. And a lot of people, and I was one of those people too, I was attributing a lot of the second half struggles for the Cardinals with Kyler Murray's lack of preparation. But let's not get it twisted. It's not all on Kyler Murray. It's a coaching thing as well. And who was the coach? Kliff Kingsbury. Stephen A. Smith touched on this. How a lot of African Americans don't get the opportunity to continue to fail and continue to prove themselves in different areas in the same field. Think I'm wrong? Where's Brian Leftwich? Super Bowl winning offensive coordinator. Where he's at? Where is he? Have you heard anything from him? Super Bowl winning offensive coordinator. Where's he at? In fact, that is a good question, Jalen. Where is he at? Let's Google this for a second. Oh, he's with the. Is he? Where is he? I'm trying to figure this out. Oh. He's still nowhere. And this is the person that won the Super Bowl as an offensive coordinator. What I'm saying is this. That's just one example. I can give you multiple examples, but I'm just going to stick to one. African Americans, for the history of history, has not really had an opportunity to fail in a profession and usually get another shot in that same profession. Obviously, it's happened before, but it's not a regular thing. It's a regular thing for Caucasians. Because again, if you want to get harsh with it, if you want to get blunt with it, Everywhere that Kliff Kingsbury has gone, he's failed. I don't think people knew this. Did you know that last season he was the senior offensive analyst for USC? The same USC that struggled mightily offensively outside of Caleb Williams, who had his worst year last year and wasn't even a finalist for the Heisman when he went in as the favorite to go back-to-back. Kliff Kingsbury has failed at every single place he's been. Yet and still, he is the now offensive coordinator for the Washington Commanders. When someone like Brian Leftwich or Eric Bieniemy has succeeded at places, yet and still can't get a head coaching or even at this point an offensive coordinating job. Remember Brian Flores? I understand he sued the league and everything. But remember Brian Flores? Very successful head coach at Miami Dolphins. Very successful. And I understand. Do you remember how ugly it was, the ending? Firing a successful coach. And I think he's now on the coaching staff for the Steelers. Why do you think he hasn't gotten a head coaching job again? You can say it's because he sued the league, and I wouldn't say that you're wrong. But what I'm saying is, why did he have to sue the league? Again, Kliff Kingsbury has failed at every place he's been, yet and still, he continues to get opportunity after opportunity after opportunity. African Americans historically has not been able to continue to fail. Usually, once they fail once, it's a wrap. Again, Brian Leftwich. And honestly, he didn't fail. He got fired because the offense struggled in Tampa Bay after the Super Bowl year. But no one talks about Tom Brady was terrible. He was bad. He was old. Tom Brady was not good. And even without Brian Leftwich, Tom Brady ain't getting no better. That should tell you everything you needed to know. I hate bringing Brian Leftwich in here because this ain't got nothing to do with him. But he is a prime example. Kliff Kingsbury resume. Let me put it on myself. If I mapped out my resume of everything that I've done in life for a job, or let's just say the last 5 to 6 years, everything I've done in the last 5 to 6 years as a job, and walked into, let's say I walked into a corporate building. Let's say I walked into Bank of America to be a teller. Let's say I walked into Care First or something, trying to get a job as a nurse or a nursing assistant or anything like that. I would not be qualified because I've not done anything that involves a bank. I haven't done anything that involves nursing, medicine, anything. They would not hire me. They would not think twice to not hire me because I'm not qualified for that job. Outside of getting the job, what has Kliff Kingsbury done? Except be a part of a team that won a Super Bowl. But he didn't play like, he wasn't important. But I guess congratulations to Kliff Kingsbury for befriending your way to the offensive coordinating position for the Washington Commanders. Even though, if we're being blunt about it, you've done nothing to deserve the job. And that brings me to Eric Bieniemy. I like Eric Bieniemy. I think that Eric Bieniemy has done more than enough to be a head coach, and it's very unfortunate that he's not. I saw Jalen Rose talking about it, and he compared the similarities to how the NFL is treating Eric Bieniemy compared to how the NBA treats Mark Jackson. And I think that there's stark similarities. I'm not obviously the only person that thinks that Eric Bieniemy deserves a head coaching job. But what I will say is Eric Bieniemy put himself in a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. And I'm not going to call it a cautionary tale because he did everything that he had to do. He did everything that he was supposed to do. So I'm not going to say, Eric Bieniemy is a cautionary tale. What I will say is, if I was Eric Bieniemy right now, I'd understand that it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. It sucks, but leaving, it sucks because, let's say this, it sucks because, how do I frame this? The worst thing that could have happened to Eric Bieniemy was last season. In a lot of ways. The absolute worst thing that could have happened to him. Eric Bieniemy left the Kansas City Chiefs because he was never getting the credit for the offensive success for the Chiefs, and he was never going to get the credit for the success of the offense of the Kansas City Chiefs because of Andy Reid and his extensive history of success and his extensive history of offensive creativity. He also wasn't going to get the credit because of who was his quarterback. I'm not saying that Patrick Mahomes, like Eric Bieniemy, wasn't a great coach, but you have the ultimate cheat code because you arguably have the greatest quarterback of all time. So the idea of I need to get out of here and prove my worth because no one is going to give me credit for for my contributions to this offense, I get it. I get it completely. But then you go to Washington. And not only do you go to Washington, Washington struggles. They don't struggle because of you. They struggle because, like Washington does, they picked the wrong quarterback. Like Washington does, their offensive line was terrible. Like Washington does, they don't have a lot of solid, skilled players. Brian Robinson's good. Terry McLaurin's good, but that's about it. And on top of Washington struggling, the Kansas City Chiefs goes and wins the Super Bowl. Which makes your contributions, obviously there wasn't any last year, but decreases your contributions even more because now people are looking like, well, they won a Super Bowl with you and they won a Super Bowl without you. So how important were you? Again, I'm not going to call it a cautionary tale because I understand every single move that Eric Bieniemy made. And if I were him, I probably would have done the same thing to prove my worth and to prove that I indeed am good enough to be a head coach. It's unfortunate that African Americans have to go above and beyond to put themselves in those positions, and I appreciate this go around how we're seeing successful African American coaches and coaches now that are African American, i.e. Gerard Mayo. We saw D'Amico Ryans, and hopefully he wins Coach of the Year. Of course, we always talk about Mike Tomlin. Raheem Morris got one. All people extremely deserving of head coaching positions. But what I will say about Eric Bieniemy, and this is where the cautionary tale comes in. You know how parents and you know how people always say, be careful who's in your circle, because sometimes, most of the time, the people in your circle can either elevate you or bring you down. The only thing that I would say that Eric Bieniemy messed up at is he attached his career to a person that hasn't seen the level of success that he's looking for. The only thing Ron Rivera has done is make it to a Super Bowl with an MVP and a historic defense. Ron Rivera is not the name that I want to attach myself to, because Ron Rivera hasn't shown the ability to be a good head coach for an extended period of time. I understand getting to a Super Bowl is great, but as I talk about with Dan Quinn as a head coach, getting there doesn't mean that you're going to win, i.e. 28-3, i.e. having an MVP in a historic Carolina Panthers team and a historic Carolina Panthers defense or season. Don't even win. You lose. So that's all I would say for Eric Bieniemy. I wish the best for Eric Bieniemy. Again, I kind of knew that this was going to happen. I didn't know it was going to be for Kliff Kingsbury, but I kind of knew this was going to happen once they fired Jack Del Rio and didn't fire Ron Rivera. Because a smart organization would have fired Ron Rivera, and if you want it, kind of like what the Raiders did, and I think they did an incredible job. You let go of your coach. You allow Antonio Pierce to interim head coach the rest of the season to see if he's good enough to be a head coach for an extended amount of time. That's what a smart organization would have done. They would have let Ron Rivera go and Jack Del Rio and allowed Eric Bieniemy to interim head coach for the rest of the season. And if he was good enough, like Antonio Pierce, when the offseason came, they would work on a contract extension. But once I saw that they were going to let Ron Rivera play out the rest of the season, I knew that it was over with. Not only for Ron Rivera, but it was over with for Eric Bieniemy, which is hella unfortunate, because the woes of last season was because, like Washington usually does, they pick the wrong players. So I wish the best for Eric Bieniemy. I really do. I think as the years continue to go by, and as opportunity after opportunity continues to fade, I think it's less likely now that Eric Bieniemy, unfortunately, will ever be a head coach. In the National Football League, even though he deserves it. But I do hope that he lands on his feet. Because as unfortunate as it is, the only wrong decision he made was attaching his name to the Ron Rivera train. And unfortunately, it crashed. So, speaking of crashing, we're going to move forward. The Pro Bowl games is what it's called now. The Pro Bowl games happened last week. And the NFL has a problem. We know the state that the Pro Bowl has been in for the last few years. We know that there needs to be major changes to the Pro Bowl. And the NFL thought that they were doing something, introducing the Pro Bowl games. Obviously, they had the Pro Bowl games before, but they obviously did away with it, and they brought it back. Also, they pretty much took away the NFL Pro Bowl game and has a flag football style game at this point. I was going to come in here and try to map out how the NFL can fix the Pro Bowl, because it was bad this year. And it wasn't just bad as a product. It was bad how it was marketed. It was bad how it was aired. It was bad how it was just a bad product. Now, I'm not going to sit here and bash the Pro Bowl games because I've done that before. And shouts out to I understand the importance of the Pro Bowl in terms of accolades. Same way I understand the importance of all-star selection. Because at the end of the day, when we're looking at a player's career, when we look at a player's accolades, when it's all said and done, and we're looking at what is their resume to make it into the Hall of Fame, whether that's NFL or NBA, something that's usually put into consideration is Pro Bowls. He was a blank time Pro Bowler. He's a blank time All-Star. Those are important. So I get it. I'm not saying do away with the Pro Bowl, because I understand in that sense how important it is in terms of a person's qualifications to make it to the Hall of Fame, and how we consider Pro Bowls important in that sense. We consider all-star appearances, Pro Bowl appearances, as important in that case, as a stat in that case. And I've talked about how we can make it better. I talked about, making it in the middle of the season. You're not going to get, obviously you're going to get the title, but you're not going to get all the players that are supposed to be in it, because a lot of the players that made the Pro Bowl are getting ready for the Super Bowl, which is the week after. And so you're going to get a bunch of alternates. Bro, why the hell? And no offense to him, but sort of offense to him. How the hell did Gardner Minshew become a Pro Bowler? What? Mitch Trubisky one year was a Pro Bowler. What? Obviously, things need to change for the Pro Bowl. I just don't have the map, because not only that, I understand NFL is different from NBA in terms of injury rate and injury possibility, which is kind of why they did away with the Pro Bowl as far as the actual game. But I think that you should bring it back. But then again, on top of that, you're off from players, because players understand, like, one fell swoop and it's a wrap. The last thing you want to do is hurt yourself in a game that essentially doesn't matter. The only thing that matters about the game is the title that's attached to you. Now Gardner Minshew has Pro Bowler, which is crazy. I don't know how to fix it, man. But I do know that there does need to be fixing. Shouts out to everyone that was a Pro Bowler, whether they participated or didn't. Shouts out to all of them. That's another thing that I also want to touch on, man, is the formatting. Like, I think if you're going to do the games, like the Pro Bowl games, kind of like All-Star Weekend to a certain extent. You need to let all the games be on one day, and then the next day, the Sunday or whatever, let that last day be just the Pro Bowl game, like the Pro Bowl. Because I didn't understand, like, they would do the tug of war, then they'd play a game or have a couple downs. Then they'll do the wall pull, and then they'll go have a game. Didn't make much sense to me. But, hey, shouts out to all the Pro Bowlers. Well deserved. Let's move forward. So there's been a lot, the day one of WNBA Free Agency happened, I think February 1st. And there has been a lot of movement, whether we talk about Skylar Diggins going from the Phoenix Mercury to the Seattle Storm, Natasha Cloud, which kind of sucked, and that hurt one. She goes from Washington, that she was there for like 9 years. She went to the Mercury. Kalea Copper, she was traded to the Mercury. Nneka Abumake, she goes to the Seattle Storm. Ari McDonald, she gets traded to the Sparks. We're starting to see the WNBA is starting to look eerily. How do I say this? You're starting to see the WNBA adapt around the Sparks. Not the Sparks, I'm sorry. The Aces. What you're seeing is teams being built to hopefully stop the Aces. You can put the Aces in that, because we've seen so little of them in the WNBA's history. I wouldn't be upset. I wouldn't be shocked if you already, even after winning just 2, you put the Aces in that dynasty conversation in the WNBA, because we haven't seen a lot of them. The Aces just became the 3rd or 4th team in WNBA history to go back to back. And as it's currently constructed, I wouldn't be shocked, because they have the best player and the best core. I wouldn't be shocked if they went back to back to back. But we're seeing teams like the Mercury, getting Cloud, getting Copper or Cooper. I understand how they're trying to build. You see the Seattle Storm getting Abumake, getting Diggins, already having Jewel Lloyd. It's going to be very interesting. Not to mention, you still have the New York Liberty that has Sabrina Nadescu, that still has Jonquel Jones. You're starting to see teams forming around. Oh, and they had Breonna Stewart. I completely forgot. I apologize. But you're starting to see teams constructing their teams to stop the Vegas Aces. And you're also seeing teams. It's like, for a very, very, very lesser extent, it's starting to feel like how it felt with Kevin Durant going to the Golden State Warriors. And what I mean by that is, there were teams, well, there was really only one team, and that was the Houston Rockets, that saw that and said, we're not going to concede. We're not going to just let them do whatever they want. There was a lot of teams that said, we're going to wait this Kevin Durant thing out. So you saw a lot of tanking. You saw teams not really making moves for right now, because they understood that right now wasn't finna happen, because you have an all-time team in the Golden State Warriors. You saw the Houston Rockets kind of build their team to stop Golden State, and you saw LeBron James just be LeBron James. That was really it. With this, you're seeing a lot more teams like the Seattle Storm, like the Phoenix Mercury, like the New York Liberty. They're not going to rest on their laurels, and they're not going to just allow the Vegas Aces to just build up championship after championship until hopefully for them the team breaks up. So, I mean, the Mercury getting Cooper was huge. Cooper is one of the best players in the WNBA. Most of these players, man, Nagumake. I apologize. Nneka Ogwumike is one of the best. She's a Hall of Famer when she's done. Natasha Cloud was the engine for the Washington Mystics when she was there. We know there was a lot of rockiness going on with Skylar Diggins and the Mercury, but we know as far as a talent standpoint how good she is. This is going to be a very interesting season, and I am going to wait, obviously, until we get closer to the season to give any prediction. But what it looks like is teams are not just going to, I don't want to say super team because I feel like that is kind of played out at this point. You see teams going all or nothing for it, you know. Like teams are trying their best. They're not just about to let the Vegas Aces just run through the league for however long they're constructed. That's all I'm saying. So shouts out to all the people that got traded. I know D.D. Robinson or Richards, I think. I apologize for messing up your name. D.D. Richards, she signed with the Mystics. There was a lot of movement, and there will be more movement. So we'll see. Damn, man, I hope my Mystics, man. I'm a little scared about Elena Deladon. Let Tasha go. Oh boy, we'll see. I also want to talk about the Grammys for a second, and how interesting the conversation after the Grammys have been. Let me first say congratulations to everyone that won an Emmy. Everyone that was nominated for an Emmy, especially when you see how much music drops weekly. To even be nominated for Emmys is a big thing. Now, yes, obviously there's a major difference between being nominated and winning, but congratulations to everyone that's a part of the Emmys. But it's very interesting the conversations that are being had after the Emmys concluded. Seeing who won, seeing who didn't win, the whole snubs conversation, this, that, and the third. We're going to talk about the Jay-Z comments in a second. Actually, you know what? The Jay-Z comments is kind of my underlining feelings for the Grammys. Let me first start this topic by saying that I am a person. That's obvious. But what I mean by that is I am not going to always agree with what you feel. And I don't expect you to always agree with what I feel. I'm not going to agree with he, her, him. Everyone has their own opinion. And that's the beauty of society. That's the beauty of the world. You're supposed to have your own opinion. Now, your opinion can change, but you're supposed to have your own opinion. And obviously, there's a lot of opinion that comes after, an award, that comes after categories and someone winning, someone not winning. That's just that's a allure of the Grammys. That's a allure of any award show, whether that's the Grammys, the Oscars, the BET Awards, the MTV Awards. The talk after, the who got snubbed, who got this, who got that, that's always a bonus for the entity in which we're describing. And as unfortunate as it is, there's always been a disconnect between the art form of music and the artist of music and the people giving out awards. One thing that's universal, and one thing that, my moms used to say and people back in the day used to always say is, someone's actions are always going to tell you more than their words. You know what somebody values by their actions more than their words. I can talk my way out of something, but my actions will always speak louder than my words. Congratulations to every single person that won a Grammy. I think all was deserved. But if you want to know why there has always felt like a disconnect between the Grammys and, let's say, rap and hip hop, or if you were questioning why, but you couldn't have any proof, there's been proof for years. They did not even televise pretty much any rap categories. We found out who won Rap Album of the Year 2 hours before the Grammys even aired. And it was live. The Grammys were live. And rap is, I think, the largest music genre in the United States, in the world at this point. Rap, hip hop, for people that didn't hear me correctly, hip hop and rap is the largest music group in the world. Yet and still, the quote unquote biggest night to hand out awards didn't even air the rap categories. Meaning, I didn't find out Killer Mike won Rap Album of the Year until I saw it on social media. 2 hours before the Grammy started. Jay-Z's comments, because Jay-Z won something. I apologize that I don't remember what he won, but he was awarded something, and he pretty much said the criteria, the way that the Grammys go about how they go about it has been flawed from the start. Now, again, I know music is subjective, but we know who Beyonce is. Beyonce has been nominated for the most Grammys, I think, of all time. Nominated. Yet and still, she's never won for Album of the Year. Never. Has over 30 nominations for Grammys. Has never won Album of the Year. Now, I'm not the largest Beyonce fan. I respect her craft and I respect her contributions to music. But I think it's crazy that she has never won Album of the Year, yet she has over 30 nominations. Or the fact that, again, rap is the biggest music genre in the world. Yet and still, it wasn't even aired. It's very interesting. Now, another topic that I wanted to hit on with the Grammys is the talk about winning and losing. And I understand that artists have fan bases. And I understand that some artists feel like they got snubbed. Some artists feel like or some artists that did win. Obviously, people feel like they didn't win. I want to focus on that Killer Mike Rap Album of the Year win. That wasn't televised, but we're not going to get back there. To a lesser extent, a much, much lesser extent, the conversation surrounding Killer Mike winning Rap Album of the Year is kind of the same conversation to a very lesser extent, and I'm going to explain. Kind of the same conversation that Macklemore, when Macklemore won, I think, Rap Album of the Year over Kendrick Lamar and over Drake. Again, we have to understand, like I just said, like Jay-Z said, that this whole process is flawed, right? Now, that isn't me taking away from Killer Mike, but that's me saying just because Killer Mike won doesn't mean that whatever didn't win wasn't good. And it also doesn't mean that they essentially got it wrong. They just made their decision. I think Michael, which was Killer Mike's album, was a great album. And it's very interesting, and kind of why I want to address this is how we discuss topics like this. Because I hear a lot of people saying that Utopia got snubbed. But when they build their argument, they always talk about album sales. They always talk about streams. They don't talk about the music. I personally think that Utopia should have won Rap Album of the Year because that is the rap album that I've listened to most since it came out. I just listened to it before I came in here and shot this or, recorded. I am a huge fan of Utopia. But that's me. I also really enjoyed the Michael album. When we talk about replay value, I listen to Utopia more. I'm not saying that it got snubbed because, 3 billion people. I'm not saying all that. Because that kind of goes to the conversation with the Macklemore winning. Yes, you can say maybe Macklemore sold more albums or he was streamed more. But does that mean that he won? Or that Kendrick should have won? I think Kendrick undoubtedly had the better album. That's why I think that was a bigger snub. But it's in the same metric, Killer Mike, whether you like the album or not, he won. And I'm not going to, And it kind of feels like at first, it kind of felt like a legacy thing. You know how last year Nas won for King's Disease when, he has had much better albums, but they finally just gave it to him? Kind of feels like that, but Killer Mike did sweep. He swept all rap categories. And I'm saying congratulations to him. Again, I would have liked to see, Travis Scott win, seeing as though he was nominated, 10 times for a Grammy and hasn't won one. But I'm not going to downgrade Killer Mike just because I feel like Utopia should have won. Michael was a great album. I just don't think it had the same replay value as Utopia. But there's a lot of people out there that don't believe that Utopia has replay value, and that's them. That's cool. People that think Killer Mike should have won Rap Album of the Year, they probably think that it was, they probably standing on 10 toes, just happy about it. And that's cool. Nothing wrong with that. But I don't think that Album of the Year, Rap Album of the Year, any Album of the Year should be considered. I don't think sales, I don't think streams, I don't think that should be included or that should matter, let me say, when discussing the rap or any Album of the Year, because it takes away from how was the music. There's songs that have streamed. Ice Spice is one of the most streamed artists of the year. I don't think that she has Album of the Year. Sexy Red is one of the most streamed artists right now out. I don't think they should have album of the year. The Baby, when he was at his peak, was one of the most streamed artists. I don't think that he's put out something that should be rap album of the or any album of the year. You know? But hey, congratulations to Killer Mike for sweeping the rap categories, you know. I wanted to give a shout out to a couple people. I wanted to give a shout out to Victoria Monet for winning 3 Grammys. So I'm gonna give my opinion. Mind you, this is my opinion. I don't. If you don't agree, that's perfectly fine. I think that Victoria Monet has a beautiful voice. I think that she is one of the best singers out there right now. And I listened to Jaguar too. I wasn't the biggest fan of just the album, but I was a fan of just her singing ability. You know, listening to her sing was great. On My Mama, great song. I wasn't a fan of the entire album, but I was a fan of her singing. Let's not go that way. But I do think that, you know, I'm happy for her for winning 3 Grammys. Shouts out to SZA for winning 4 Grammys, I believe, or maybe 3. I have stood on the table and said that I believe, that's my opinion, I think SOS was better than Control. Whoa, I know. Before you start to go click clacking, that's my opinion. I think SOS as an entire album is better than Control as an entire album, even though Control has some bangers. I'm not going to lie to you, but I like SOS more. So I'm happy that she won 3 or 4, I believe, including progressive rap or progressive R&B album. I think she won of the year. I know she won for Ghost of the Machines, which isn't my favorite, but hey, she won, so shouts out to her. And I think that kind of brings me to my last point before we go. Artist fatigue. I think that there is starting to become artist fatigue when we talk about Taylor Swift. Now, I couldn't name you 5 Taylor Swift songs. That's me. I'm not going against anyone that supports Taylor Swift, that likes Taylor Swift, that thinks Taylor Swift puts out nothing but bangers. I don't know. Yo, I'll just say this. I didn't know. I'm not a country guy. I don't listen to country. It's just not a genre that I've really gotten into. I stumbled across the Chris Stapleton album. Incredible. And White Horse, I go crazy when that song comes on. I'm still not a big fan of country, but I do like that album. So that's just my opinion. All of this obviously is my opinion. But I, for one, think that SZA should have won Album of the Year, because obviously I listen to SOS more than I listen to whatever Taylor Swift dropped. Again, I'm not part of that demographic. I don't listen to Taylor Swift on a regular. I don't listen to Taylor Swift at all, to be honest with you. But it just feels like, and I don't know if that's due to the NFL as well and how they're covering Taylor Swift, because they understand how big of a fan base that she carries, but it's just becoming a lot. And I'm also, because I see a lot of people on social media getting like attacked for supporting Taylor Swift. I'm not going against this girl. Look, what she does has nothing to do with me. I don't listen to her music. That doesn't mean her music sucks. Let me say that. That doesn't mean her music sucks. It just means that I don't listen to her music. She doesn't have me as a fan. It doesn't take away from the millions upon millions of her fans. I'm not going to bash who you support. You know, I'm a huge fan of Travis Scott. I'm a huge fan of SZA. You know, I'm not gonna bash you if you like certain type of music, and if you don't, if you like Taylor Swift music, that's good for you. Music is subjective. But what I'm saying is, it just feels like, again, I think that is also compounded by the NFL and how much they're covering her with Travis Kelce and everything. But it just feels like there's fatigue when it comes to Taylor Swift, even though she is dropping a new album that she announced at the Grammys. So, but again, man, congratulations to Killer Mike, Victoria Monet, SZA, Jay-Z, every single person that received a Grammy at the Grammys. Well deserved for all of you guys. And there you have it. That has been today's episode of the Unpopular Podcast. I truly, truly appreciate you guys. If you want an Unpopular Podcast shirt, hoodie, sweater, long sleeve joggers, the link is in the description below. I have multiple different colors, multiple different designs. Get your Unpopular Podcast merch today. Also, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, man. I'm trying to reach as many followers as I can, and or subscribers, as I can, and it definitely means a lot. Tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend. If you like the content, subscribe. Also, if you're listening on the DSPs, whether that's Apple Music or podcasts, whether that's Spotify, whether that's SoundCloud, please subscribe or follow wherever you're listening. You guys matter as well. I put a lot into the audio as well, and please tell a friend to follow or subscribe. Also, follow the socials. Follow Instagram, follow TikTok. I post pretty much daily. I post stories. That's where you can pretty much reach me the fastest. All the links in the description below. Follow, you know. Until next time, much love.